Loader. Check this out. Okay, everyone, this is going to be our beginner level how to operate a wheel loader. This is a second one. It's 2020. We thought we'd redo our original one that's a few years old. So this will be, again, very entry level for someone that's never got very little hours in a wheel loader. First things first, we've already done our pre-op inspection. We've got a separate video on that I'll link up above. And then I already know the site I'm digging at. So obviously you want to know your area that you're in to make sure there's no underground utilities, overhead, things like that. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get in the machine. Now, first things first, most important I'll cover is 3 points of contact. For any heavy equipment, make sure your 3 points of contact. All equipment, the doors will generally lock open. What you don't want to do is try and climb up when then this thing is kind of free like this, because you're going to, either the wind will blow it or you might pull on a handle there. So these things will lock open. So you know it's locked like that, and then 3 points of contact getting up and into equipment. And then the release. There's always a release that's right inside the doors there. Swing that around. Okay. First things first, seatbelt. I've had plenty of videos. Always wear your seatbelt. I know a lot of operators that do this will not. Don't listen to them. You're in a protective cab. It's only going to protect you if you're actually secured to it. So after that, key, I'm going to turn this on. Always give the system a sec to boot up. Make sure there's no issues. Everything's good. And we'll turn it on. Now, today we're running a Komatsu WA270 wheel loader. Now, as you've seen in other videos, I try and keep it somewhat brand generic because the controls are very similar. They overlap. So I'm going to show you this machine. However, read your manual for whatever machine you have just to make sure. And then, we'll go to the basics here. So I always like to cover the safety pieces first. So some of the things I always talk about, first of all, the cab. You show how I lock the door shut. I like to operate with a sealed cab. These are climate controlled, but definitely making sure doors locked shut, windows closed. It's up to you. These doors can operate with the door locked open, and some operators for that, or they maybe have windows down just to hear outside, which can be a benefit. For cleanliness too, I like to keep them closed just to keep the air. You don't get all the dust and everything in here. Outside, you saw a seatbelt. Make sure that's on. Usually there's an armrest there on the side. And then just making sure your parking brake, all those features are operational. They're going to generally they'll be on. They won't start if they're engaged or anything like that. So on the Komatsu, there's a red P on the dash right there, and I've got the switch right over here. That's my parking brake. That means the machine won't roll anywhere. And then you get a lockout lever on the right side here. This is for the joystick. So the joystick won't operate, and there's a little red indicator on the dash that lets me know that's not operating. The one thing about wheel loaders, though, is even when the machine's running, even though the parking brake's on, this thing will still spin. So I tell a lot of people, be really cautious. I've seen operators come up, someone might walk up to the machine, and because the parking brake's on, they think they're safe, and then someone grabs this or bumps it. Obviously, if you're standing outside the machine, it's easy to get someone thrown off machine. So make sure that you know the steering wheel is still live. Now, again, I'm not going to go over all the individual controls. Again, each machine's going to be a little bit different. But on this Komatsu machine, my quick attach is here. That's to detach the bucket. We're not going to cover that in this video. I've got my lights there. I've got a ride control right there. Komatsu's climate control is right here on the right, these blue panel, which is up here on my dash. And then below is my menu options if I need to cycle through anything there. On the steering column itself, this is going to be the shifter, and you can see over here, forward, neutral, reverse. This is how I shift it. This is my speed selector. I'm going to show you the two different ways to drive it, but this is one way that we primarily use. Your right's got your turn signals, headlights, and then you got wipers down the right. Then coming back on the right, your boom and bucket control is going to be a boom, which we'll go over that in a sec. On the joystick itself, there's some other you can actually shift on these as well. So that's one. And then on the right over here, there is this is a throttle for when you're in first gear. It's a kind of almost extreme low is what I call it. But it's really if you're in I can honestly say I don't think I ever use it. Usually if I'm in one here, what it's at. But you can set this to a very finite little speed if you need it. And then I've got my traction control I've got my shifter selection, things like that, and access bucket or fork. So there's some other buttons on there. Get to know your machine is basically what I'm trying to say there. Now, as far as the other piece then, just making sure mirrors are set. So there's mirrors outside your cab, there's mirrors inside, and then you got a backup camera. Most of the newer machines are gonna have a backup camera, which are helpful because even if I look over my shoulder, there's a big old engine right back behind me. It's tough. I can see farther out, but I cannot see directly down. So it's always good to make sure all those features are working. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and engage the machine. Now, foot pedal, I usually just use a right foot on for a new operator or really anyone. If I can, they're right next to each other. It kind of operates like a car, throttle and a brake. The two brake pedals, you'll see they are connected. This is not like a, you know, some backhoes or tractors, you operate one operates left side, the other right. That's not how a wheel loader works. So these are connected. You'll see they both move. That's why I recommend just using your right foot. Some operators are used to using 2 feet, and if you are, that's fine as well. So foot on the brake, I'm going to cycle that parking brake off and then cycle my joystick on. So I'm just going to start with my joystick. Now, this is a single joystick design. You will see some loaders have 2 joysticks, one for the boom and one for the bucket. I prefer when they have just one single joystick. It operates a lot like a skid steer or a lot of other pieces that just run single joystick on the right. So on this, the boom, the back and forth is the boom. If I pull back, this is going to raise the boom up. So pulling it back raises the boom up. Once I'm up, I'm going to go ahead and show you bucket dumping here while I'm up so I don't hit the ground. If I go to the right, it opens the bucket. If I go to the left, closes the bucket. And then if I push forward, it brings it down. So that's as simple as it is. The boom is back and forth. Left and right is your bucket control. The other piece to that, some of these, which you might have seen, the auto level. So if I get the bucket relatively level, the machine will hold that angle if I pull straight back. So you'll see it's actually raising and opening the bucket. It's doing that automatically. With that said, I always recommend knowing manually how to do that if you need to curl and raise. But the thing it protects you from too, if you have a really full load, you don't want to curl this all the way up and be up above you, or you're going to dump material over the back of it. So you don't want to do that. The other thing, let me show you. So if we just dump right there, a lot of the newer machines will have return to dig or return to scoop, whatever you want to call it. And that's if I just take this left joystick and I just go like that, it's going to bring it to level. So it's going to auto bring that back. So that's really helpful if you're doing a lot of repetitive going into a pile and doing it back and forth. You don't have to manually adjust that. Now, the other piece on this joystick, you'll see there is a shifter on the right. This little yellow switch. For Komatsu, you actually have to engage it to use it. It only let you choose on the switch one. You're either shifting on the steering column or on the joystick. Now, a lot of operators, you know, if you've been doing this, it is kind of simpler to have it all on your right. For new operators, though, anything we do out here, we try and really dumb it down because I don't want your brain to get overloaded with too many different functions. So we like to keep it simple. That's why left hand is driving, right hand is boom and bucket. It just makes it a lot easier for us. But again, you'll get used to one way. It doesn't really matter which. Now, driving position, you always want to be low and tight. So that means right above the ground. Now, this machine will, if I put this down, I can actually drive with the bottom of this thing in the ground. So you want to make sure you're off the ground a little bit, you know, maybe a foot or so. I usually recommend driving position as this boom cylinder, the bucket cylinder that's right below the dashboard, the steering wheel. You want to be able to see out over this. I don't want to be driving with this thing up in the air where I can't see obstructions in front of me, things like that. So you don't want to be too in the middle. You don't want to be any higher because your center of gravity is an issue, and then you don't want to be all the way in the ground. So I usually aim to have this right below, and then if you're fully loaded, you're going to have the bucket curled in to hold that. So that's your right joystick. Now left is steering. With this, they are articulated in the center. So with the wheel loader, there's a center pivot point right here in front of the dash. That is where this machine pivots. It's right here in the center of the machine. This can be for a new operator. It just takes some getting used to, because typically when you drive your car, your front tires are the only things that turn one way or the other, and that's not how it works in a wheel loader. The reason that can be awkward is if I start turning left, right now my machine, my face, my whole body is actually going to the right. Very subtly, but it's happening. So it can take a little bit of getting used to, is knowing which way that machine's going. Now steering is here on the steering wheel. The steering wheel is, most smaller machines will have this. The larger, you start getting the larger wheel loaders, they'll actually have, there will be no steering wheel. It's on your left. It's a joystick that goes left or right that does the exact same motion. Those are in the bigger machines, and they're becoming more common. They're a lot more, less wear and tear on the human body by doing this motion all the time. So you'll see those more. And then our shifter is on the side of the steering column. We got forward, it's 3 clicks, forward, neutral, reverse, and then my speed settings here. I usually start at 2 just to keep it. Again, 4 is if you're in the open, if you're going long distances on a road, but you're gonna wanna be able to adjust that up or down there. So those are all the different controls. Now, let's talk about going into a pile. Coming up to a pile, we're just gonna do 1 scoop, bring that down. Now you just want to make sure that your blade is level. So the challenge with a wheel loader is you can't see your blade edge up front there. So on our training, the machines we use on this site, you'll actually see there's red lines on the top of it. Those are actually, those indicate our blade angle. So if you don't have red lines, just know there's always a place right on the top of the bucket that's going to match the blade as the same thing. So this one, again, I can see, I'm going to go down. Sometimes you can touch the ground. I usually like to be a foot or so above the ground, or inches, I should say, and then you're going to drive into it. Now the key to scooping a bucket is you don't just go in and curl the bucket. We're actually going to go in. Once I feel it kind of stop, what you want to do is you want to be raising the boom at the same time and while you're driving forward. What that is doing is transferring that load. You're actually pushing down on the front tires to give you more traction. You're pushing it down. That's why you want to make sure you're maintaining forward motion. With that said, you do not want to spin your tires. It adds extra wear to your tires. It also creates a big rut there. The challenge on our site, we're extremely sandy here, so we almost always end up spinning our tires. So you just want to be careful. But I'm giving it some throttle here. I'm going in. I can see my tires are starting to spin a little bit. I'm raising it up. Once I get up to about my dash, that's when I'm going to start curling it, pulling back at the same time. And you should end up right around your dashboard. You don't want to necessarily keep raising it up. With that tire spin, that's probably one of the toughest parts, to get really good at sensing your machine. Again, our area, it's great for training because this is probably the most soft material. We're on a sand that's really easy to spin. The other thing in the traction control gear, that's where you could adjust, go down to a lower. This is on auto traction control. If I put down to low, it'll actually limit how much I spin. Once I do that, put it in reverse, look over my shoulder. I got my backup camera. As I'm going back, that's where I'm going to start bringing it down. So you always want to drive with it right below the dash. And then I've got it curled up all the way so I don't end up losing material. And then I can drive this thing all the way around, whatever way. I'm going to dump this one right back at the same spot. And then as you drive forward, so I'm driving low and tight to the ground. That's key. The only time you're going to get in a lot of trouble in a wheel loader is anytime that bucket's up above your head. These machines, a wheeled machine has 4 points of contact. They're extremely top heavy. If you start going up and start maneuvering a lot, I'll show you that in a second, that's where the machine gets tippy. Now as I pull this back, you'll see that auto level is curling that bucket away from me, which is a good thing. And then I drive up. Now you'll notice, I'm going to drive you don't want to let your tires drive up the pile at all. You go up high enough so you have enough room to clear when this bucket opens. When I open that bucket, it's going to come down about another 4 feet. But the thing I want to show you is this machine, like you can see the sway right now. These machines, this is where, if I were to start driving up this is where it can get a little hairy. That's why you don't want to do any of this positioning while you're up high. You don't want to do a hard reverse. That's how you end up flipping over a wheel loader. Is you want to try and keep the base relatively level. That's why I'm not going to let my tires drive up there, and I'm going slow. After that, I'm slowly opening it. You can pull back at the same time if I need to. And I'm dumping it all the way. Sometimes if you have material that might stick, you might bang it a little bit to bang any material out of there. And then all I can do, if I want to do that auto curl, it's going to go to return to dig there, return to scoop, and then I can click reverse. To park the machine, what you want to do, put it in neutral. Always rest that bucket flat on the ground. You don't ever want to leave any tool that you have in the air at all. Park it flat. I'm going to lock out my joystick there. I'm going to put my parking brake on. Make sure I have a solid red P. Let it idle. Usually it's, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds. The newer machines, they actually recommend you don't leave idling very long. And then I'll shut that machine off. Door release is on the inside of that handle. 3 points of contact coming out. Okay, everyone, that's our beginner entry level how to operate a wheel loader. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave any tips or tricks